right, this is the Unspecial Podcast. My name is Zack Ponder. I'm the host, and I'm joined today with Alethea Ussher. Alethea is a career special educator for 20 plus years, has some experience in respite work, and also a caregiver to her aunt, and brings us a lot of insight into the world of special needs. So super excited to have you on, Alethea. Thank you for joining. Welcome to the Unspecial Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So let's just get straight into it. Can you tell me about your journey in special needs?
Well, I'd say it started as a little girl. I just was always attracted to kids that I saw that I could tell that had visible needs and just wanted to instantly be their friend and talk to them and know about them. So I don't know, just an attraction to kids in general and people with special needs.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to me. I didn't have much experience growing up that I can remember. And I knew there was a special education class, but I didn't have any interaction with it. I was saying, what drew me into special ed is I was actually a youth director at my dad's church, and I needed to make some more money, so I started subbing, and I signed up for a paraeducator sub job. I had no idea what it meant. I just finally got a sub job, so I went for it. And I walked into the classroom, and a kid came up. It was an elementary class. He came up and kicked me in the shin. And I remember thinking and looking around like, what is going on in this room? And it was like the most chaotic day ever, but it was super exciting and intriguing. So every time I saw a paraeducator job post, I would jump on it because I would do gen ed as well. But I have no patience for the attitude and entitlement. So that's what got me in.
Well,
It's great.
I went from law enforcement and decided I'm going to go back to school because I was a dispatcher at the time and they were doing mandatory overtime. So I said, okay, it's time to go back to school. And I had my undergrad in psychology, but didn't want to do a master's because I didn't know what I want to visit. So it was either evidence technology or similar to your mom, actually, or go back to school and get my degree. So that's what I did, or my
Yeah.
teaching credential, I should say.
And 20 years later, here you are.
Yeah.
How did you not burn out? I heard burnout is like between the 3 to 5 year mark. I made it
Oh, I did.
7.
I did burn out. I for sure burn out.
But now it's summer, so you're feeling better.
No, I started like you, I started as a para and I was in an autism program at a middle school and back in California and then rolled into a teaching position. Well, I was having my daughter. I was pregnant with my daughter when I interviewed and I ended up getting a severely handicapped program with kids with multiple all varieties of disabilities. And it was a kindergarten through second grade class. And I had 12 students and 6 paras,
Ooh,
5 of which were one-on-one. So it was a very busy classroom and I did burn out. I did.
yeah.
So
Yeah, you always know when you have like a 2-to-1 ratio, it's going to be a great year. My first 2 years was in an autism program at high school level, and it was non-speaking violent kids with autism. And it was wild. Daily stuff would break, chairs would fly. We had like a full-on zone defense just to protect anybody and everybody. The first year, we had a freshman come up from 8th grade, and everybody was warning us, like, this is the guy, you need to watch out. And he lived up to it that first month while we're trying to figure him out. I think he sent 12 of the pairs to the ER.
yeah, that's intense.
Yeah. We became good buddies. It was always good. There's not too many male teachers or male paras. So my male students, it was a lot easier because we could form a pretty good connection. But if I had to go to like a teacher meeting or a training or something, it was always like my phone would be going off. I'm like, oh God,
Yeah.
what is happening? And then finally I started getting out of the teacher meetings. I'm like, I can't sit in here knowing class is chaos. So
Yes. Yes.
the trials and tribulations, but it's fun. It's great.
Yes.
How about,
You said an adventure every day.
right? How about caregiving? You mentioned that you're a caregiver to your aunt. When did that
Somewhat.
start and what's that story?
Well, she was married for over 20 years and her husband passed away. They were heavily supported by his family. So when he passed, my aunt and my dad, they stepped up and she moved to Arizona from California with them. And quickly they realized, oh wow, she needs a lot of help. She doesn't understand finances, she doesn't know how to make decisions for her healthcare needs. So my dad actually took over caring for her and she ended up having her own place. She had money. She was able to work a very simple job. She was a busser at a restaurant that was family run and she could do that fit her personality and her skill set. So she did that for a long time. And then fast forwarding the years of her with my dad, we found out that there was some mismanagement of her money. And so that's when my her sister, my other aunt, and I did a conservatorship and a guardianship. So I learned a lot about Medicaid through that process,
Yeah.
and who qualifies and who doesn't. And it's been a roller coaster of education for me.
Wow. So is she still in Arizona?
No, so once I moved from California to Idaho, she agreed that Idaho was somewhere she wanted to be. So we moved her to Idaho. And then I had to go through the lengthy process of transferring her conservatorship and guardianship over to Idaho, which was unheard of. And this was 11 years ago here.
Okay.
So now they understand it pretty well. We were kind of a guinea pig project, I suppose.
Man, I
Yeah.
can imagine that's super frustrating. And I know a lot of the listeners and the families that tune in and follow us have some experience with Medicaid. Could you just educate us a little bit and give, I don't know, three pro tips?
Yeah. So for my aunt, she's higher functioning. And like I said, she was able to work. She has a 401k. My dad did good to set her up with a 4K with where she worked in Arizona, actually Nevada. It's a tri-state area where she worked or lived. And so actually she didn't qualify for Medicaid because she had so even though she became disabled before she was 18, she didn't qualify because of her money. And
Mm-hmm.
so we opted there are some other ways to qualify, but I forget the name of that. Luckily, we just didn't need a lot of Medicare help or Medicaid help. And
Yeah.
we pay out of pocket for she does a day group up here in Bonners Ferry, and we just pay that person cash.
So she gets penalized for having a job and making money.
So the thought process is you spend down that money so that you can receive those services.
So it's almost as if it's not encouraged to work.
Kind of.
Okay. So what does she live with you now or where she live?
She's able to live alone, but needs a lot of support. So she lived in an apartment in town, and we were on a first name basis with the apartment manager because we definitely needed to advocate for her. If something broke, she didn't quite understand what was an emergency and what wasn't. So we lived close enough to where we could do that. And then when my other aunt moved to Idaho, they moved in together. So she lives with my aunt.
So that brings up an interesting thought. And just in general with special needs, how would you define success or progress? I know for me in the classroom, because I always taught day classes, special day classes. Typically, most of my students were not speaking. And the whole goal for me was independence. And that's kind of how I gauged progress and success and just getting them ready for life and to function in society. And I had a little bit of unconventional way of going about my classroom. It really drove the specialists and the book people crazy because I saw my students more as a person, which I maybe you can relate probably. I just felt like all the therapies and a lot of book knowledge treated them as a project. So my final every year was I would build my program the entire year for the last day of school. If I did nothing and the students ran the class, success.
I would
So
have loved to see that.
yeah, I mean, I was my last year teaching in Sandpoint. I had one student, he would run the computer. He liked pushing the buttons and the tech, and throughout the whole year I would help him navigate the software and everything. So he would run the computer. I had another student in front of the class like pointing at all the activities. And then I had one student was acted at kind of as a para. She would always want to help everyone, so she would get all the assignments and pencils and everything. And then I had like my more functional skills students. So they would go off, they'll do the laundry, get the lunches on their own. And safe, proud to say that last day of school, I did nothing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But well, yeah, how would you define it?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I'd say it's functional skills. It's either they're going from unsafe and unfunctional or dysfunctional to safe and functional behaviors. So, and I have some examples. I also worked up here in a group home. We have a lot of Montana and Idaho have a lot of group homes for struggling teens, as you I'm sure have heard. And
Yeah.
so one year when I worked there, he was a particular student, was in high school, obviously, and he came from family that expected A's. And he's very smart, and they knew he was smart, but he wouldn't accept any help and had a struggle with attention and completing tasks. And so what I saw as progress was he went from accepting my help and actually finishing something and maybe getting a B or C. That was success over the A. And to this day, I'm still in touch with him. He graduated the program and is doing well. And his parents ended up being on board with that and agreed that that was success for him.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I think a lot of the listeners and families can learn a lot from that to not define success for their child compared to another child. It's kind of what they deem as success, and every student's got their own path. So
exactly. And then the other example I have in a traditional school setting would be a student that I had recently who is on the spectrum. And as we know, autism is individual per every person. So one might really struggle with sensory processing and one might be completely nonverbal. So this particular student is very affectionate, which doesn't go with your traits of autism, very intelligent, but he has major sensory issues and needing to know how to use tools to cope within the classroom. And so he sees something as unfair. And so, from just a couple years ago when I first met him, of tearing his paper, chewing on his paper, digging holes with his pencil, he is now going from an IEP to a 504 because he has utilized coping skills and communication skills enough to where he's doing fantastic and did really well on his ISATs with very minimal supports.
that's incredible.
Yeah, so that's exciting.
Yeah. So I just got to stack those small wins, and then hopefully you look back and are like, what? How did I get here? How about the back to the group homes? And how did you experience the families? I recently we had a family member who just put one of their child in a group home, and it was very traumatic. And I can imagine I had a handful of students in group homes. Some of them, one of them was really bad. Ended up calling CPS a couple times on them. And from my experience, it's just a very difficult situation. Is that how you experience the parents?
It can be. A lot of these particular homes, that my husband has worked with them too. He would actually do some of the transporting of students, of going and getting them for the parents and bringing them to a program, which can be very traumatic. And so the kids would tell me stories about that process of being surprised and taken and then brought to, either they go to a wilderness program and then they transition from that to a group home setting to go through a program that will reintegrate them back into society. So I would be at the level of where they're integrating back from wilderness and start doing online school in that group home setting. And so I would meet with the parents, mostly just talk about school, because my role was overseeing their online school program. And many of these families were wealthy. And so many, there were just other family issues like addiction and things like that that maybe led to the student coming to a group home. Or I don't know, some weren't wealthy and they had really good relationships, and it just needed to happen where they put their child in a home. But for the most part, they were really positive to work with, but some weren't. And I'm probably not answering that very well.
No, no. It's yeah. I know the group. I just think of one group home. My first year, I think half of my students were in the group home, and it was just like horror stories of what was going on in the group home. And I just can't imagine parents having to make that call, And it's not that I don't fault them for it. I just like we have no idea what day in and day life is unless we experience it ourselves. But I know for a few students, they have other siblings, and if the situation isn't safe, then it's kind of like you got to make a decision.
Yeah. Yeah. And it depends on the type of group home that they're in also.
Right. Yeah. They could also, there is some too on the flip side, some great ones that do amazing things that, you know, the at home, the child couldn't get that kind of support and services.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and actually, I forgot to mention it, but I worked at a group home right out of college, actually. It was 4 boys. It was a sex offender program. But what happened with those boys is they were all victims of that, of
Yeah.
rape, basically. And so then they then acted out. And so that was a tough situation for me, because we were set up to where, I had a male staff person that I was partnered with to signify kind of a normal home. And but we weren't allowed to hug them.
Interesting.
And they were from anywhere from age, oh, I don't know, maybe like 14, 15 to 18 or 19. And that just broke my heart, because it's like, well, they need to know what appropriate affection is. If we're modeling a family environment, it should
Hmm.
be, but they had intensive therapy at that particular with that program. Group therapy, individual therapy, all of that.
Yeah, that's heavy. I don't know how to transition from that. Just goes to say, I mean, what comes to mind too is I think that especially in this community gets a bad rap, and people are so quick to judge because they see, I hear from a lot of parents, just going to the grocery store with a kid, one of their autistic children, and they throw a tantrum in the middle of the store. And all the eyes that the parents feel coming at them on like, why can't you get a hold of your child? Like, what are you going to do? Do something. But people just aren't willing to look past that. I just feel like there's so much more going on with that situation than you have any idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, and I think if people just took a moment to observe a little bit longer, they're going and take a different perspective of what could be going on. I mean, you and I probably recognize a student with, with certain needs right away, which if yeah, we work with those children and that community, but I think if you just take a step back and wait for a moment and observe, and you're compassionate enough to observe and want to help, you would notice that there was something else going on.
Yeah.
But they're quick to judge and like they need parenting classes. They're not doing it right.
Right. I mean, I get those looks sometimes with my kids.
Yeah, I remember
Get
my
them.
daughter having a major tantrum in the grocery store. It was very embarrassing.
I just wish some, I mean, I don't think I've ever really experienced that, but I wish somebody would just go up to the parent and be like, how are you doing? Can I buy you a coffee?
Yeah,
Because clearly you're frustrated, but
yeah. Well, I've
I don't
I've
know.
offered my help. Like I'm pretty bold that way of, "Is there any way that I can help you?"
Right.
Or I'll
Right.
take your other kids if they have other kids with them. I'll help them while they're doing something to help
Yeah.
that situation, but I don't know.
Yeah. So then what's one thing you think schools get right and something they get wrong?
But that was a tough one when I was thinking about that. Well,
And you're
we
still
know from
employed, so you can't speak too much. I'm not. I could say whatever I want.
yeah, yeah. I'd say that again, like I've worked in a variety of settings, different levels of district. I worked for a county office of ed, and then I've also worked for a small district. And according to funding, it makes things very difficult. But in general, I'd say culture around special needs school or special needs children in school is that they need a place, a space that they can go to or to even have within the general ed classroom to meet their sensory needs. And I think that that is a huge change, a shift from when we were probably in school and our
Yeah.
parents' generation. It was all about sit in your chair, face forward, don't make any noise. There's no way you get to stand up when you need to. And you were just expected to always be in order. Whereas today, in most classrooms and most places I've been, there's alternate seating available. Kids have options to stand up if they need to move. Accommodations are built in for all students, not just students with special needs. So I'd say that culturally, we're doing a good job that way. General ed teachers are more apt to exercise those accommodations. We still have some, which is shocking in this day and age, that just won't adjust and
Yeah.
acknowledge what's going on, which is super sad. But overall, I think that that's where we're doing a good job. But the challenge, I'd say, is it really depends on funding and the amount of people that you have to help.
Yeah. And it also, I think of too, a lot of it comes down to the teacher. Like if just, unfortunately, if the child gets a good teacher. What are your thoughts on inclusion? Now we're going to nerd out a little bit. Two educators going for it. Inclusion. I was a huge fan of inclusion. I just wanted my students to experience life as closely as possible as they could. I mean, I had them in everything. Wood shop, which is I don't know, I still think is a great idea. I wrote about it in my book, Special Days, which it is actually it's available at the time of this recording, and when this drops, it will be available on Amazon. And yeah, woodshop, that was an experience. But I had them in all of it, like FFA, Future Farmers of America in San Diego, California. I had them feeding all the pigs and the chickens. One time, one of my students kicked one of the chickens. and they nursed him back to life. It ended well. The process was a little bit much. And I would always, in the pre-school year teacher meetings, I would always just assess all the teachers and be like, who is my friend? Because those ones are like, they're never going to work with you. And then those other ones that are open to it. Typically, the ones that were open to it, I would get my students in their class. But inclusion, what are your thoughts? I hear from parents like some are for it, some aren't. It's like some were like, why would you put my student in that situation?
Yeah, it really depends on the individual. I really think, because when I first got into special ed and got my first position as a teacher, we had my program, which was the severely handicapped class, and then next door we had severe multiply impaired, so they were medically fragile kiddos.
Okay.
Really, really tough to be
Yeah.
in that program, but so fun also. So we would actually integrate together. So some of my friends' kids would, those that could, didn't need, I don't know, didn't need a lot of those extra supports and were more mobile, even if they were in a wheelchair or hospital bed, they could move into my classroom and do group with us. So it really just depends on the individual and what they can handle, and be safe for everybody. That's my big thing, is how is it going to impact everybody's learning and their safety? So for the general ed classes, we had some students that would integrate, and I thought that was great, and some it just wasn't a fit and they were too disruptive, and I don't think that's fair to the other students. I do think it's really important, more so sometimes for the general ed kids, to
Totally.
experience the more extreme behavior kids being around them, because I find that actually, um, up here in Boundary County, they all grow up together and it's a smaller community. So they're all just very well accepted and they know each other from a very early age all the way to high school. And so they just learn how to help their fellow student, which I think is great.
Yeah, it really gets them out of their comfort zone for sure. I would
Well, yeah.
always have peer student aides. I had two amazing ones my last year in Sandpoint. And then Wolfpack was one of our peer groups. They would all come in once a week and read books and play games or whatever. And they would always just have so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I think it's
that's,
important.
yeah, it's usually where all the good stories came from too. What about what about IEPs? Let's keep nerding out. IEPs, individual education program plan. It's every teacher's, I don't know. I didn't mind the IEPs. I didn't enjoy the paperwork. Sitting in the meeting was fine. And I know for parents it's daunting. It's nervous time. It's highly emotional. What advice would you give to some parents?
They need to know that they're the most important part of the team, because they know their
Yes.
student at home versus how they are at school, which is why I chose to do respite care early in my career, because I wanted to understand the parents' perspective and their needs at home so that I could relate better to them all the way around as that whole child coming to school and then at home.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my forte, is that relationship building with families. I think most of the parents that I've worked with have been really good at asking questions and advocating.
Mhm.
I also make it a point in an IEP to make sure that they understand that we're not using jargon and all those
Yeah.
fancy terms, and that they understand in plain term what we're dealing with, and that they can ask questions and call a meeting at any time and don't be afraid to do it. I would appreciate from parents participating more in the actually reading the IEP. Many parents, I don't think, read the IEP. Um, and try to help with the progress of those goals. They are very much, if they're doing their part at home to work on the goals, while we're working on it at school, I think that we'd see more.
Yeah, getting that buy-in from the home life. I think, this last year, I probably drove my kids' teachers crazy. And, yeah, it's funny because I was that parent that I always was like, "Come on, can you help me?" When I was teaching.
Huh?
But I was that parent this last year because we would always forget assignments, always forget their homework, and their teachers were like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know, sorry." Like, give me a break. They're like, "You used to be a teacher, you know what it's like." I'm like, "I know." So, with your in-home, did you ever have a student in the classroom and do in-home with them?
I did not personally.
Yeah, because obviously different settings will bring different results. Um, and I'm sure do you ever come across like a parent saying, "Oh, I don't see that at home. Why is he doing it in the classroom?"
A
What would you say
little.
to that?
Yeah, I doubt that. I doubt that, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, unless there's an antagonist at school that you can pinpoint, it would depend on the behavior.
Yeah. How about let's get some breakthrough stories, some good vibes. Share a good breakthrough moment you've seen in a student.
Well, like the student I was talking about earlier that just a couple years ago first starting to have him identify tools to use to help him regulate his emotions, and then slowly seeing him do that independently without us prompting is really cool. Any breakthrough for any teacher is not going to happen unless you have relationship and trust with that student. And so I'd say that's like my big thing. And that's life in general. Any kids that you work with, any person that you're working with has to begin with relationship. And so a lot of kids that are on IEPs are just coming into the special ed community and having to leave the general ed classroom to be pulled out for services or whichever is a stigma, and so if they're already feeling insecure about learning, you immediately need to build trust with them or they're not going to even work. So if they want work
Mm,
for you individually, how are they going to do it independently? So,
yeah.
and unfortunately I see teachers not take the time to build that relationship, and it's pretty traumatizing and long lasting. I hear stories from adults that go, "Oh, I had dyslexia, and my teachers said the most awful things to me and didn't take
Yeah.
the time to really understand what was going on." And it forever impacted the way they were as a student. Yeah.
Which I think is just crazy. Like, why else would you get into teaching? It's the whole
Yeah.
point.
Yep. Yep.
So, for all the listeners, if your child is experiencing that, find another teacher.
Yep. I would definitely advocate for that.
Yeah. And going back to the IEP, like you can suggest a different placement, which a lot of parents don't know is like, I can say, so obviously sat on the teacher side of the table, but I'm not employed by any district anymore. But from all of my experience, when a parent advocated and spoke up, they ultimately always ended up getting what they asked. And the more they fought it, the more headache it caused administration. But ultimately, they got what they asked for. Within reason,
I
obviously.
was going to say thank you, within reason, because I have experienced some parents that were advocating way beyond what was realistic,
Yeah,
and just completely unfair for the district and for anybody.
yeah,
You wouldn't ask. Somebody made a comparison of a Honda versus a Cadillac of an education. It's
uh,
public education. If somebody wants all of these extra things, are those even available? Is that equally available to every student
Yeah.
to help support them move along? And it just has to be within reason and realistic. There are some individuals that, unfortunately, and I'm not in their shoes, but they just haven't accepted the situation of where their kiddo is at, and they want it fixed. And so there's a lot of sadness and blame happening, and I think they sometimes that's projected onto a school district to fix and fill that void, that they just want the situation to be different.
Yeah.
And I my heart breaks for that, because I'm a woman of faith, and I believe that God uses every situation and every human for a purpose. And I'll tell you a quick story to back that up too. I have a book called Angel Unaware that was given to my grandmother, um, because they knew about my aunt. And the story is, do you know Roy Rogers? It's way back before our time. It was like during our parents' generation. And there was a show, Roy Rogers, and they were a Hollywood family, and they had a Down syndrome daughter.
Hmm.
And the book was written by Roy Rogers' wife, and she it's based on scripture of, you could be entertaining angels, not aware that you're entertaining angels, like within the context of being kind to strangers. And so their daughter had such an impact on their life, and she was medically fragile as well, and she ended up passing away. But the book is about her life changing them for the good, because she existed.
Yeah.
So um it's just, I see every special needs person as, people go, "Oh, you don't you feel so bad? How do you work in that environment?" I go, "What are you talking about? They have so much joy, even if they're nonverbal, and in a hospital bed, they are so excited to be with you every day and share in whatever way that they can, that you're doing life with them, and it's a happy, wonderful experience."
Yeah, those comments were always kind of annoying. Like, "Oh, you're such an angel working there. You must have so much patience." Blah blah blah. Like they're people,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like us.
yeah,
If we're typically the being teacher, we're their heroes. Like, why wouldn't you want to do that?
yeah, yeah,
But I don't know. That's what we're trying to do here is shift some perspectives and mindsets on just how to see special needs world a little bit differently. And that's a lot about what Special Days is about. My book, it's 12 stories from my teaching days, and I related them all back to the Bible and how I found and saw God in my students. And it just totally shifts your perspective when you can look and see God in your everyday life. And in turn, it makes it really special. And which reminds me, I got a text the other day from a mom that is just going through a lot of hardship with some medical stuff with her son. And she was on the podcast a ways back, but she said I realize only I can change how my life is going. I can sit around and be depressed about what God has gave me, or I can rejoice in all the things He has gave me. And I thought that was just such an amazing perspective, going from a victim to a victor and really shifting how she thinks and is operating. Which, how would you like speak to the emotional journey that these families are going
yeah,
through?
yeah. If you are a brand new parent and you're just finding out that your child has needs, be it autism, which usually happens around 2 or 3, and you go from almost a typical child and talking to all of a sudden not talking, and that doesn't happen for every individual, but if you're young and you have a younger child, it's going to get better. And an example I'll give you is one of the students, I just went to his high school graduation party. He is autistic. He was nonverbal coming into kindergarten. And here he's moved to a 504 as he's graduating high school. Completely verbal, completely functional, all of that. So you need to have your village and be around people that have the mindset that we do, and
Mm-hmm.
find your many friends will probably drop off because they don't get it, they don't understand, they can't relate, and that's sad. They're missing out. But if you have your village and you have your support community, and of course your faith, you're going to get through it and accept help. I've really run into
Yeah.
families where they're not going to church together, they're not really socializing, and they're not accepting respite help or just help from anybody who says, hey, you guys need a date night, we're willing to watch your kiddo. Say yes.
Right.
Please
Right.
say yes, because we are out there. Yeah, there's not a lot of us that are willing to do that, but we are here. And I've had people deny me that, you know, that blessing, and they've denied it for a while, and then they come around and they accept it, and it's super, super helpful. So we're here, use us.
Yeah. Totally. It's in the area of self-care for parents and burnout. I think you hit the nail on the head with not only accepting the help, but like you said, turn the blessing of the one helping that they receive from helping is huge. And it's kind of just like you just got to accept it and let it happen.
Yeah. Yep, and do life with your kiddo. There's a family up here, they adopted their kiddo with special needs. He's mostly nonverbal. They do
Wow.
everything with him. They take
Yeah.
him everywhere and do so he's very much a part of the community. And yeah, it's gonna get better. Like, it does get better.
Yeah. How has working in special ed and with all your various students changed you?
Well, I only had one daughter. All of the students that I've had have become my kids. Like, I just think of them as an extension of my family. My life would not be the same had I not, been working with all of these students. They're just, like you say, it's an adventure, but it's fun, it's rewarding. Yes, it's challenging. I'm not a paperwork person. Law enforcement was the exact same way for me. I hated doing the reports. I still hate doing
Yeah.
IEPs for the paperwork part of it. It's not my thing. I like to teach, and being a special ed
Right.
teacher, you often don't get to teach anymore. You're just a facilitator, and that's not why I got into it. So, um, yeah, I don't know. It's become my thing. Yes, I've done a lot of different jobs and been a teacher in different settings, but it's just kind of God made me for this, definitely.
Yeah. I can relate to that for sure. I had stepped away from teaching in 2021. Moving to Idaho, just I couldn't support my family. So I had to step away, but I knew that I wasn't done with it. And I knew God gave me the gifts I have with the community. And it's just I've had a lot of various careers come out of college, and I never wanted to go back to any of them. But special ed just always stayed with me. So then it was kind of like how I always had this idea to have this podcast, write a book, and support families, especially sitting through all the IEP meetings and seeing the how difficult it is on families. And I always remember thinking like everything's about the student. What about you? How are you doing? And it was always a lot of times tears because it's just so difficult. But yeah, meeting a lot of people like you, other guests I've had on the podcast, and thank you, Alethea, for all your knowledge and wisdom and insights and encouragement for all the families out there. I'm sure it's comforting for everybody to know that there are amazing teachers out there and those making a change in the special needs community.